Before we dive in, here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts. Hey there, true believers. Andy Nelson here from the Marvel Movie Minute podcast with the rest of the team.
Pete Wright, Kyle Olson,
Rob Cabasco,
and Matthew Fox.
This is the podcast where we dissect the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time, exploring every detail of this epic superhero franchise.
In our season looking at Iron Man 3, we're going to mix things up a bit.
That's right, Rob and I are your guides, but instead of our usual minute-by-minute format, we dive into 5 minutes of the film in each weekly episode.
It's a totally new approach, but one that still allows us to explore all the depth and detail that makes these movies so special, even if Iron Man 3 isn't all that special.
Hold on, that's where you're wrong. Extremists, Shane Black.
Yeah, would you like to look at the Mandarin and Maya Hansen? Mm-hmm.
So whether you're a die-hard Marvel fan or just love deep dives into movies, there's something for everyone on Marvel Movie Minute.
Suit up and join us on this epic audio adventure. You can find us at truestory.fm or by searching Marvel Movie Minute on your favorite podcatcher.
Because in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, every minute is packed with excitement.
Enough said.
Ever wondered what happens when a Zoomer who grew up on the Clone Wars,
A millennial Anakin defender,
And a grumpy old Gen Xer walk into a cantina to talk Star Wars?
then we've got the podcast for you.
Star Wars Generations is a place for fans of all backgrounds to come together, talk about why we love the franchise, and what we can learn from each other.
With so much new Star Wars content coming out, we take a deep dive into all of it. We talk stories and characters, what we learn about the Force and the Empire, Republics old and new, and how each story adds to the larger picture.
Besides episode-by-episode coverage of the new shows, we've been going back to watch the movies in release order. We talk about Star Wars novels and video games, along with fan content and cosplay.
And with each episode, we're just starting the conversation, and we hope you jump in. We'll read your feedback, answer your questions. We've even had full episodes dedicated to questions raised by listeners like you.
You can find us under Star Wars Generations on your favorite podcast app or by going to theethicalpanda.com. May the Force be with you.
Now this is podcasting.
Hooked on you, baby, you're golden. Time moves, I never noticed. Just can't get enough. Got me wonderstruck.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Make Me a Nerd. I'm Mandy Kaplan, and this podcast is my mission to explore all things nerd culture. I am a Swiftie and a reality TV junkie and an NFL lover, which feels out of character, but I am. And all my life, I've avoided all things science fiction and comic books and anime and video games, Dungeons and Dragons, video games, arcades, video games, avoided it all. That all ends today. And it ends with really the best guest I could possibly have to discuss this with me. I don't think she needs an introduction for anyone who knows me or has ever listened to this podcast or my last podcast, The Man Cave. This is a former documentary filmmaker and a current professor of film at SOU. This is Megan Isser.
Hi, I'm so honored to be here. I'm such a faithful listener, and now I'm on the show. Very exciting.
Do you know how many shout outs I've given you? Like, do you keep track?
I do.
Notch your bedpost?
Yes, I value every single shout out I get, and they're all true.
Well, this one's going to be full of them because here you are.
Yeah, here I am shouting out.
Now, I know you very, very well. Not a nerd.
Not a nerd. I am an admirer of nerddom, which is why I think this particular podcast topic is relevant to me.
Well, you are pretty nerdy about film and documentaries specifically. So when I had this idea, you were excited. There were several films you thought of that we could really dive in, but this was on the list, and this felt so perfect for my podcast. What did you choose? Even though everyone can see it on the home screen.
Yeah, I chose The King of Kong, which is a documentary that I saw when it first launched in 2007, and it has always stuck with me. I hadn't rewatched it until now. In fact, I showed it to my students because I'm teaching a film analysis class. And I was interested to see how it held up in my mind because at the time it was one of those documentaries that just blew my mind because it wasn't this epic topic that most documentaries tackle, like global warming or, sticking it to the man. It was this real niche underground culture and crafted in a really like fiction like style. And I thought, oh, I can do this. And it was a light bulb moment for me. And I was hoping that it would also be for my students a light bulb moment. And the fact that it ties into your nerd
Love of video
Yeah.
games. Yeah.
it all seemed to be a great idea.
I pressed play on the trailer, and within 2 seconds, I was like, oh, yes, this is a great documentary to discuss on Make Me a Nerd. All of the subjects of the documentary are nerdy in their own ways, even though one of them thinks he's cool. So really, if I could ask you to elevator pitch, oh, King of Kong, what's that?
Right. Oh, you're so much better at these elevator pitches. But
Oh, you want me to do it?
no,
Let's try and do it at the same time.
It's that doesn't. It's a good thing this isn't Zoom. It's a documentary that follows two arch enemies who are devoted to Donkey Kong, and we see the way these two arch enemies handle their rivalries in very different ways.
Yes. Okay, so nailed it. This movie was directed by Seth Gordon, who
Mhm.
directed Horrible Bosses, one of my
Yeah.
all-time favorite movies.
Yeah.
So the approach is very comedic,
Yes.
and it starts the first frame. I forget who's being interviewed because I immediately started typing, this is not a documentary. This is a Christopher Guest mockumentary.
Right.
The way they talk about this is so deadly serious. And the people who support video game record setting, it's all about who can set the high point score and maybe get a world record.
Mhm.
They are called Twin Galaxies. They have their own website, their own world. They interview one guy who says, I'm not into drugs. I'm not into drinking. I have a superior addiction.
Yeah.
Video games.
Right.
And was this actually in 2007 that they were filming them? It felt earlier.
It felt earlier, and I wasn't sure if that was because I'm old and I thought it felt newer then, but it actually felt like I was watching Citizen Kane or something. And, it
Right.
really did feel old. I think it was done over the course of a few years leading up to that, but it wasn't tremendously older than 2007. But I think Donkey Kong just feels so retro.
But also their outfits and, the style of everything felt really out of date. So they began filming in 2003.
Okay.
Oh, nope, that's King Kong.
Let's see.
So, fun fact, King Kong began filming in 2003 and finished in 2005. After the first couple of interviews, they cut to Walter Day.
Yeah.
And he is chironed as the world's video game referee. And he is in uniform, in the ref's stripes. And he says, I'm going to do a dramatic reading now. I wanted to be a hero. I wanted to be the center of attention. I wanted the glory. I wanted the fame. I wanted the pretty girls to come and say, hi, I see that you're good at Centipede.
Amazing. I know. When I watched it with my students, I was like scanning to see who was laughing, and there were that one was quite a moment. And I love, it's such an innocent time, and I was worried that, I know that your podcast really wants to pay reverence to nerddom. And as I was watching it, I was like, is this laughing at? Is this feeling mean? And there's something so just wonderful about them that I didn't feel like it was mean. I mean, I think we can pick it apart a little bit, but no, it was adorable. And I really, respected him.
Walter Day, the
Yeah.
referee. Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know that I did. I wrote, he looks like a Scooby-Doo bad guy. He has like
I
big
could see
bug
that.
eyes and a mustache, and
But he came around. He started off that way, but I think he redeemed himself as being a little less biased than we thought.
Right. Well, so let's go there about the spirit and the tone behind this movie, because I have the same note. Is Seth Gordon making fun of this world? I can't imagine he didn't find all of this funny. At 22 minutes in, it doesn't bother me, but I'm scared I'm going to start feeling like a mean girl. And there's a movie that I referenced called American Movie.
Mm-hmm.
It came out late
So
90s,
good.
I think, but
Yeah.
it made me deeply uncomfortable. It was making fun of these two lower middle class kids who were trying to make an independent movie,
Mm-hmm.
and these filmmakers followed their journey, and it really mocked them and
Mhm.
mocked their community and their status. And I felt deeply uncomfortable about that movie.
Mm.
And I got worried at 22 minutes that that's how this movie was going to make me feel.
Yeah.
But I think the reason this movie gets away with it is because of Billy Mitchell. The star of this movie is
Yeah.
this guy who, it seems pretty clear he's a devotee of Tony Robbins.
Yes. Something
Right?
like that. Yeah.
He thinks he's the shit.
Yes.
And he's so deeply unlikable and shady
Yeah.
that then I think we're allowed to mock the world, because he makes it, he brings a negative thing to it. He makes us all feel like you're willing to cheat and lie, maybe, to maintain your Donkey Kong status, which is, then I'm free to make fun of it.
Sure. I mean, we can circle back to him, but the other piece of it that balanced it out for me and didn't feel like it was mean was Steve, the guy
The
who's
challenger, the
the
upstart.
challenger. Thank you.
But say his name, please say his name. I'm going to say it a
Wiebe?
lot. Steve
Wiebe?
Wiebe.
Oh man.
Wiebe.
And I have to say that scene when his kid wants him to wipe his butt while he's trying to break the world record, like I still, whenever my little one asks me to wipe her, I still think of that scene. Daddy, wipe my butt. And every time it happens to me, I'm like, thank God I'm not trying to beat the Donkey Kong world record, because I would be way madder than I am right now.
Well, that's a whole tangent about his parenting, but
yeah, also, yeah. And I'm like, oh, now that I'm a parent, like he did not handle that well.
Right.
But his life to me also felt normal. Like his wife was loving, she was frustrated and, critical, but also understood how important this was to him and just wanted him to feel good about himself. And so he wasn't your typical weirdo, which made the film feel normal.
So the film starts with Billy Mitchell, and they go into his history. He started playing as a teenager. He hooked up with Steve Sanders, and they became best friends who conquered the video game world. They make it seem like they were celebrities. They make the scope feel like you couldn't go anywhere in America without, hearing about Billy Mitchell.
Right.
That scope gets very small when we see the actual events that unfold. But the way they are interviewed, it is so Christopher Guestian, but Billy Mitchell is so cocky and such a jerk. He is fantastically... Pete, if you could put a picture of him in the show notes or something for everyone, he reminds me so deeply of a Ben Stiller character, specifically White Goodman in Dodgeball, the bad guy who's... Like Ben Stiller should play Billy Mitchell.
Right. And that's funny because they, a lot of studios wanted Seth Gordon to turn this into a fiction film. But he's like, there's nothing more you can do with this. It is so unbelievably real that you can't even mock it. But yeah, they are such classic characters. But the thing is that I do think as a documentary filmmaker and studier of the genre, they did, I believe, manipulate Billy's character to really demonize him. And he was very upset with the film. And
yes, he was.
And
he has spent his life in court.
Yeah.
over
Yeah.
this film and his titles being taken away.
Yeah, in the Guinness Book, and
Yeah.
it's taken over his life. He's very bitter, and supposedly Seth Gordon did manipulate the facts a bit so that it seemed like Billy really wasn't coming to play in person, which he would have, and I don't know. So there might have been some fudging there. But
Okay.
still, Billy is not a likable person.
Right. So that frees us up to root for Steve Wiebe, who is
Yeah.
just a guy who gets a Donkey Kong in his garage. He's a high school science teacher. He has little kids at home. You were saying normal, relatable guy.
Yeah. And sorry to interrupt, but you saw the value of video game playing for him. He has a very unique mind, and he's his hand-eye coordination, and they brought that out in a way that felt like, oh, there is a value to this. This isn't just a man wasting his life away, although he sort of was. But
Well, it was so sad. His wife and him, and they interviewed like his brother and friends. They were all saying he just never succeeded. He was close to being a good athlete and failed. He was close to being a musician and failed. He's always been second best.
Yeah.
So that is what's at stake for him when he sends in a videotape of him breaking Billy Mitchell's record.
Yeah.
I mean, this thing gets so unbelievable. Up until then, it's like, okay, these weird guys take this a little too seriously, and this is a little awkward. They send spies to his house to break apart his Donkey Kong machine to see if it's street legal.
Right.
Like,
I know.
they're like the Men in Black.
Mafia. Yeah.
Mafia, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yes. It is. That's when I started going, whoa. This is not just, look how goofy these guys are and they take this so seriously. But his wife said, no, you can't come in. And they went into his garage anyway and took apart his Donkey Kong machine.
So menacing. I know.
Yes, these like henchmen. We skipped over Richard, the guy whose job it is. He's not Walter Day, head of Twin Galaxy. He's Walter Day's right hand, and he watches thousands of hours of people breaking the record to see if they really broke the record. That's job. I'm putting job in quotes because they're not being paid. They just created this world.
Right. Very important business.
Right. And so they're filming Richard, and he's like, oh yeah, I got to watch that stack over there. That's going to take me, days, and I got to watch that stack, and here's more video games. And then they show him working out his wrist.
I know.
With a half a dumbbell.
I know. Amazing. I know.
I mean, it is so unbelievable. And as a documentary filmmaker, let's say you're in his, I'm assuming, parents' basement where he lives, and you see the hours, you're looking at the stacks of videotape. Do you, as a filmmaker, say, hey, what's that dumbbell on the floor? Do you do any working out? Right? So that gets him to pick it up?
Yeah, that's a fine line. The purists would say you never try to direct or make things happen artificially. Of course, that's not true. I think it takes instinct to feel like you're asking them to do something they would do anyways. That would be the ethical way to do it. But there are, there's definitely the producers who will create things and they know inside like this is gold, and to me that feels icky. I wouldn't do that.
You wouldn't?
No, my hope would be that this is what he does anyways, and on the pre-interview call I know about these dumbbells, so I make sure they're around and it's on my shot list. But then then you're entering mean girl territory.
Yeah. Oh, it was a laugh out loud moment. It just,
I know.
Oh my, you can't believe it's real. Okay, so that's back at Twin Galaxy headquarters, which is in New Hampshire. Is this all taking place in New Hampshire?
No, because Steve Wiebe's in Seattle or near Seattle.
Right.
And then Billy seems to be in Florida a lot.
Crazy glued to his couch and his cordless phone.
Yes, while his hot sauce on the shelves are selling like hot cakes, apparently. So I think there's a bit of a triangle of locations.
But Twin Galaxy seems to be in New Hampshire where Fun
Yeah.
Spot is. Because
Yes.
they're all, okay. So when they are interviewing Steve Wiebe and his family and his wife is saying he came in second best always, she says Donkey Kong is his safe haven. And she's got tears in her eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a little too sad and dark, right?
Yeah.
Here's this guy we want to like, but they show him utterly ignoring his children, not just the one you mentioned. It was a string. He ignored his kids. Both kids are on the couch next to him, and he's just playing a video game and ignoring them.
Yeah.
And then he on the world record tape is when the kid is begging to have his ass wiped.
Yeah.
And then there's all this footage of his little boy standing bored, waiting for dad to finish playing, and dad's just ignoring him. I mean, there's a darkness there.
There is, and there's a deadness to his eyes when he's playing, and it feels very disconcerting. And
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if it wasn't Donkey Kong, what else would it be? What's going on there? Because when he's out and about and he's teaching, he seems like a very likable, lovely person.
Mm-hmm.
But when he goes into that zone, it's very it's chilling in a way.
Great word. And the fact that they're so invested, like that his family and friends are, did you hear back? Did you make the world record? Or, and they're, it's sad.
Yes.
It's sad. I mean,
yeah. And all of it makes me wonder about when I was watching it with the college students. Obviously, the video game world is totally different now, and it's online, and it's this epic, huge thing. And what are the similarities between this era of analog arcade games and what's happening now? And does it feel like the same, or is it its own beast? I don't know. You're surrounded by video games more than I am because
yes,
you have a teenager and all of that. But what came up for you?
Well, I mean, watching Steve Wiebe zone out while he played, at least he's not playing something violent. What occurs to me is, what if you were playing Grand Theft Auto and just like drool is coming? There's no drool in the movie, but that's what it's like. He just zombifies. And that would be even more disconcerting. It's like video games used to not be graphically violent. So there was a harmlessness.
Although this is a gorilla bonking things on the head to get a woman.
Yes, but
it's not first person shooting.
It's right. It's not disturbing. It's cartoony. Yes. It's silly. A frog can't really cross a freeway without getting crushed. So, but it seemed like a more innocent time. And I like the social aspect, which is something I like about video games in my house. When Casey started saying, well, can I call my friends and play on speakerphone so that we're talking? And it was like, yes, now you're not just isolating and zoning out. And this at least was in person. They would have to go to the arcade and play together.
Unless you record it. That was their version of their online, which reminds me, when I was a kid and I had a Nintendo game, I would record myself playing a perfect game. And then I'd invite my friends over without them knowing. I'd put in the VHS and they'd be playing, wondering why they keep losing and why I keep winning. They're like, I swear I pressed it. And they were playing a pre-recorded video game the whole time.
You are a criminal mastermind. You're so devious. And I've heard so many of these stories. As a kid, if we were friends when we were kids, I would have told on you a lot.
Oh, yes. You would have been out for me. Yes.
Yes. I was too upstanding.
Yes.
Now I think we've switched roles. Now I can stir up some trouble and you're a goody-goody. But yeah, I mean, that is hilarious. And what made you think, I know what I'm going to do? Just the practical joke of it all?
I just loved controlling this world and watching somebody wonder why things weren't happening the way they wanted them to. And I
For
was,
those who can't see her, her eyes just went red and steam just started rising behind her. I love controlling. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, God. Well, so when the guys break into his video game machine, they think it's because Roy Schilt, you all
Yeah.
know Roy Schilt, right?
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's aware of Roy Schilt.
Mhm.
He provided the board to go into the machine for Steve Wiebe, and they think Roy Schilt might have messed with it and fixed it so that Steve Wiebe could break the record because he hates Billy Mitchell. And then they show a little background on who Roy Schilt is, and it is intense and completely unbelievable. He's made softcore porn, and he deems himself like a military guy with no clothes.
So strange. Every character is this rabbit hole. You're just like,
Yes.
how is this real?
Hmm.
And they are.
Yep. So now they think this is a conspiracy. Roy Schilt helped Steve Wiebe, so Steve Wiebe's got to go prove himself in person at Fun Spot. Quote, a sanctioned location like Fun Spot is what
I'd
Billy
like to
Mitchell
know what
said.
makes it sanctioned. I mean, I guess they probably check all the machines and there's a soda fountain or something.
Right. So they're touting this. We're all going to gather at Fun Spot for,
Yeah.
and I did miss it. What did the digital sign say? Was there a gaming convention or was it a competition? What were they calling it when everybody gathered at Fun Spot?
I don't remember what they called it. I'd have to go back. I missed that too. I don't remember.
Okay, but there was some sort of tournament situation where they were going to
Yeah.
gather at Fun Spot to see who could break the record. One of the questions, so I'll leave you all hanging about the tournament for a moment while I
Mhm.
backtrack. The soundtrack on this movie is unbelievable.
Yes, it was a
They
huge part of
shelled
it.
out.
Mhm.
They're
Mhm.
the best around, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
Eye of the Tiger.
they shelled out for the soundtrack, and it really adds to the ambiance and the
The
tension.
rocky feeling of it.
Yes. Um, and then I was so curious how they all communicated. This was really before email and online internet life, or at the
Mhm.
beginning of it. So, how did, today an E3 gaming conference would have thousands and thousands and thousands of people and sell out hotels, and it would be this huge deal. How did Fun Spot spread the word? How did they know
I'm
to gather at
sure
Fun Spot?
yeah. They didn't really highlight a forum, but I'm sure there were the early days of chat rooms and lots of pagers, and
Mm-hmm.
somehow word got out, but that being said, the crowd wasn't that huge, so I don't know
You
how
can't even call it a crowd. It's a
yeah.
smattering
Yeah.
of white guys,
Yeah.
maybe 18 of them.
Yeah. I was feeling self-conscious of that because gosh, was that a white guy movie.
Yeah,
There was very little diversity in that movie.
very little. Now, this is all such a bygone era. 18 white guys sipping on their sodas, watching Steve Wiebe play Donkey Kong.
Mhm.
What did your students think of this?
Yeah, so thanks for asking. They have to analyze every film I show them, and I've been showing them some real big films, a lot of disturbing, from Get Out to Gravity, epic films, and so I think they were probably like, "What now? What are we watching?"
Yeah, it's a
Um,
tiny world.
it is tiny, and I have to say their analyses have been pretty thin. I'm not surprised, but a little bummed because they don't have a lot to say. And so my hunch is that maybe what landed for me in 2007 I think with reality TV, they're just more used to seeing underground worlds and getting people to say stuff that you normally wouldn't hear. For me, and I can see that. At the time I loved the access and the grittiness of it, but I think it's just more accepted these days. They
And it
felt
must feel historical to them.
yeah.
Whereas you're a little older than I am, but I mean, arcades are of our generation. We remember going to arcades and
Yeah.
standing around watching your friends play Pac-Man or
Yeah.
whatever. They don't. I mean,
Right.
maybe Dave and Buster's, but it's not the same. So they don't have that arcade experience the way we
Yeah,
do.
when they play these types of games, it's cute because it's retro, but then they go to their real high-tech stuff over
Right.
there.
Then they put on their VR goggles and call
Yeah.
it a day. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting to me that they might think of it as historical.
I know, they probably felt like they were watching some, like Singing in the Rain or something really old.
Right. Talkies.
Yeah, but what has become clear is that the arc of the film, the narrative, is very familiar and solid and clear.
Mhm.
And the rivalry and good versus evil, that was so clear for them that that's what they picked up on.
Right.
Yeah.
And Twin Galaxies has a pretty solid website. They still exist.
Yeah.
And I thought their website would look like it's from 2003, but it doesn't.
Right.
So if you happen to break a record, that's where you send your high scores, I guess.
Yeah, they're legit. They serve a purpose in that world, and I believe they're still connected to the Guinness Book. I didn't realize the Guinness Book relied on places like that, but it makes sense. They can't
makes sense.
monitor everything.
Right. So I didn't write down who said the quote. It might be Brian Kuh, who I said is
Mhm.
the real star of the movie.
Yeah.
Or Q. I'm not sure how to say his name. So I think he says, well, I mean, it's not as hard as the decathlon or triathlon, but it's still very hard to play Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
I
mean,
I'm just taking real quotes.
yeah. It was interesting to hear, and that's another, I would love a comparison to the video games of today, but it has a lot of street cred, Donkey Kong. It's apparently very hard when you get to those higher levels. And it made me anxious to watch because you only have so many lives, and if they're getting interrupted, I mean, one false move and you're done. And I mean, I would be dead in like 2 seconds.
Well, and they were all distracting Steve Wiebe when he was
Right.
playing.
I know.
I would think they would build plexiglass around him and not let anyone near him, but they're like sidling up next to him like, oh, yeah. What screen are you on? Okay, good, yeah. So
Yeah.
any traffic on the way here? Like they're just talking to him.
I know. I was surprised there were not rules around that, because that seems like tampering to me and could really lead to bad sportsmanship.
Right. Well, you know who wasn't talking to him? Billy
Billy.
Mitchell. He didn't show.
Mm-mm.
He
Oh,
accused. I'm at the first fun spot.
Okay,
still,
okay.
At the first event, he accuses Steve Wiebe of using a bad board, and
Yep.
and he's like, the only way to prove you're real is to show up at Fun Spot, a sanctioned, and then he doesn't show up.
Yeah. And then the old woman, I didn't quite understand the grandma.
Doris Self.
Yeah.
I feel like they had a lot of footage of her and they cut it.
It was a thin thread.
Billy Mitchell hands her a videotape and he's like, I don't care if your luggage doesn't make it. This videotape has to get to Walter Day. And she's like, okay, Billy. And she's a Q*bert champion. So she goes to Fun Spot for the event. Let's keep putting that in very verbal quotes, or obvious verbal quotes. So she shows up and she's just off in the distance playing Q*bert.
Yeah.
And then they devote the film to her because I guess she died shortly after.
Yeah.
But it was thin.
Yeah.
I wanted more about Doris Self.
Yes, I did too. Either give us some more or cut her out. It was an interesting twist, and then it didn't go anywhere.
Okay, so Billy's at home glued to his gross couch with his flip phone.
Yeah.
And Brian how do you feel? Kuh.
Yeah, I think Kuh.
Okay, Brian Kuh is his man on the scene. So Brian Kuh keeps running out. He's watching Steve Wiebe, and then he runs out and he's updating him. He just cleared a screen. He just conquered the blah, blah, blah. And I can't stop laughing. And then I guess Steve Wiebe's going to get to a potential kill screen. This is, I guess, a big deal in this world. It's like where the video game ends and no one ever really gets there. So Brian Ka is walking up to all these people, all six other people at Fun Spot. It looks like a Tuesday morning at Fun Spot. There's no one there. It's empty. It's dark. And he's like, potential kill screen. You want to see a potential kill screen? Potential kill screen.
I know. Nobody cares.
And I wrote, shut up, Brian Ka. No one is interested in a potential kill screen. It was so funny.
Well, he's also trying to get people who are equally as addicted to their games to care. And it's like they're in the middle of a skee ball streak. Leave me alone.
So he's the Michael Hitchcock in Guffman. Do you remember when?
Yes.
And he's like, Corky said, that's show business. And he can't, and he can't be in the show and it kills him. That's the Brian Ka. And I loved it so much. I wrote, and then when Wiebe breaks the record, he seems to have quiet, murderous rage. He's like, so I guess that's just how it goes. And he can't control his anger. And then he invites out all of his gang back to his cabin
to decompress
and have Domino.
Yes.
He lives in an actual cabin.
He does.
The ones behind Fun Spot. I don't understand these people's lives. Oh my gosh. A potential kill screen. If we ever start a band, Meg, that'll potential kill screen.
It's a
will
great
be
game.
PKS. So I wrote, there are maybe 19 people at Fun Spot total, and Brian Ka keeps calling it a crowd.
Yeah.
The crowd's all there. And he's calling Billy Mitchell, the crowd's watching. No, the crowd's witnessing it. The crowd's here. I'm like, no, Brian Ka. There's no crowd. And they're maybe just waiting for the bathroom. No one cares.
No. And that was before social media where granted, there was a whole documentary film crew there to prove him wrong, but he didn't have to answer to any live proof that it was a smattering.
So then Wiebe breaks the record and Billy Mitchell reveals the tape. They're like, we have the tape of Billy Mitchell doing it better.
Right. Let's all gather.
They gather and they're wiping the screen.
Yeah.
Show this video at Fun Spot. Again, all 14 of them now.
Yes.
Because some of them, had a curfew and they're probably under house arrest. So they're home now. And they show the video. Half the video screen is waving and jump cutting.
Right where the score is.
Oh, was that right where the score was?
Which was one of the things Billy is now, or was, I guess, suing for. Or claiming that the filmmakers actually tampered with the video and that it wasn't like that in its original form.
Well, I got to tell you, Robert, it's all up to, is it Robert? Richard. Shoot. Okay. So Richard says, look, Twin Galaxy is about integrity above all. And I will do that till my dying breath. He's the one who has to say Billy Mitchell's tape is real. Billy Mitchell's the champ.
Yeah.
I wrote, wait, Steve, you showed up to do it live because Billy Mitchell accused you, and now he sends in a tape? Trumpian. That was my note. So Trumpian.
Hypocrite.
Oh, I was so into it. I was like gasping and, wanted to throw stuff at my TV at Billy Mitchell for his hypocrisy. It was so good.
Yeah. And so just so unfair to Steve, who made this big trip and he has kids and he's like, fine.
Does he though? Does he care about the kids? Not so much.
He made some kids.
Right.
And here he is, and Billy doesn't show up. And he's so chill about it. But again, in this disconcerting way, like he just becomes emotionless.
This is also one of those times that the sadness of the movie got to me.
Yeah.
And I said, Meg, is that the filmmaking? Or do we think this world is really sad? Do you think they intended to infuse sadness into it?
I think the concern around the family is real from Steve's family. Clearly, his wife was concerned, and his family could relay concerns about him. But I don't think those are sad people. I think they're humans, just like all of us, and they have a lot of different sides to them, and this is
Yeah.
one of them.
It felt a lot like, now that I'm thinking about it, on American Idol, when they do a package to show the family supporting their loved one, and they're like, "Oh, I've been hearing him sing his whole life. When he was 3, that's what it feels like when they're interviewing Steve Wiebe's friends, who are
Yeah,
talking about why Steve Wiebe deserves to break the record."
yeah. It did feel like a package deal, but it it seemed genuine. I mean, he has this narrative to his life where he just can never win.
Yep. Oh, uh, this has nothing to do with anything, but Billy Mitchell, who clearly just moves his hot sauces around on the same shelf over and over. They had a lot of footage of that. But he wrote, "I had Latin friends and Canadian friends. I always had to keep America on top." That's why he's wearing an American flag tie.
I know. Thank goodness this was not now. Who God only knows what he's like now. But as a hot sauce fan, are you compelled to
No,
score
I will
some?
not support Billy Mitchell.
All right.
No. Um, then so how do they go back to Fun Spot? Maybe I was folding laundry. What they decide they're going to once and for all, because was the tape legit, or what is Steve's record legit, right? So they're going to do it again at Fun Spot, and Steve brings the whole family.
Yeah, I think the idea was that Billy was going to actually show up this time. They were giving him another chance to show up in person, and he does.
And he walks like a creeper behind Steve Wiebe as he's playing Donkey Kong, holding the hand of his wife that we barely meet, but Billy Mitchell
I wanna know
apparently
more
has a
about
wife.
her.
Right. And her bangs. But so Billy Mitchell comes to town. He circles the Fun Spot parking lot. He's there looming large, but he
Yeah.
won't sit down and play Donkey Kong in front of anyone.
Right, and that was the moment where I thought maybe he is a total fraud. We don't see footage of him like we see of Steve.
Right.
Steve, you watch his hands, you see the hand-eye coordination, and that was a moment where I was like, I've just been taking this guy's word for it this whole time that he's actually good at this thing.
Mm-hmm.
We don't see it.
It's so hypocritical. I know we both said the word, but the tension of, oh my God, there he is, Billy Mitchell. He just walked in with his doting, proud wife. She is strutting around like Cha-Cha de Gregorio on Danny Zuko's arm. And it's this big deal. Again, only 11 people in the Fun Spot.
Yeah.
But the filmmakers made the tension. So it was like, oh, peas and carrots. Billy Mitchell just walked in. And
Right.
I felt that excitement. Like, he's here now.
Yeah, there he is. And they're in the same room together, and they're both near video games together. And I didn't quite understand why he hates him so much. Why was he giving him such attitude? It's not his fault.
No.
It seemed so unwarranted.
Yeah. And there's even like, I think it's Brian Cuh is outside reporting to Billy, and then the filmmakers are trying to interview Brian Cuh, and Billy drives into the parking lot and picks up Brian Cuh, and they drive off. Like, it's bananas. What's with the espionage?
I think as a filmmaker, that's where my spidey sense thinks there's some frustration going on with the production and Billy and trying to schedule him, and something else is happening that they don't want to break the fourth wall and bring into the film, but there's tension that's real, and we may not know why. But they used it to their advantage.
I just couldn't believe it. And then the events, this is a quote, in the when they're, that's how the film ends. The film ends with Billy holds the record. Steve couldn't break it back in person. He goes home with his wife and kids after a day on the beach on a cloudy, sad day. Even the weather was so cloudy and sad.
Yeah.
And then they do title cards at the end just to update us. Richard, the judge, Richard, right?
Yeah.
God, I can't remember if it's Robert or Richard. The events of the Fun Spot tournament caused him to resign.
Yes. It
He's
was
no
a
longer
seminal moment.
judge and jury of Twin Galaxies. Wiebe set a new record after they filmed.
Right.
And so he holds the record, right?
Yeah. Yeah. He
Still
does.
to this day, we think?
Well, Billy has challenged it, and I don't know what the outcome is. I think that what they did was, yes, Steve still holds the record. Billy has challenged it on the Twin Galaxy side, but the Guinness Book still holds Steve or something like that.
Okay, so in 2018, Twin Galaxies member Jeremy Young filed a complaint regarding several of Mitchell's records. The validity of Mitchell's August 2010 high score set at Boomer's Grand Prix arcade could not be determined. The referee who allegedly witnessed and certified the record was gamer Todd Rogers, who appears in The King of Con and was exposed as having fabricated scores earlier in 2018. April 12th, 2018, Twin Galaxies released an article on their website titled Dispute Decision, Billy Mitchell's Donkey Kong and All Other Records Removed. The article announced Mitchell had used emulation software to achieve the Donkey Kong high score rather than an arcade machine. This is banned because it allows players to cheat in undetectable ways. Mitchell was stripped of his records and banned from submitting further scores, and Wiebe was recognized as the first person to score over 1 million points. Due to this, Mitchell's scores were also removed from the Guinness Book of World Records. The investigation committee cited footage obtained from the King of Kong DVD special features, maybe worth a watch, as instrumental in exposing Mitchell. But then I read he had just won in court or something.
Yeah. I think he won part of it, but he still isn't getting the full credit. But I can't help but feel like I could have made a ton of money off that emulation software, knowing that I had started that with my VHS recording.
Right.
Damn.
Yep. Now, did you tell your students about that story, and did they say, what's VHS?
I told them I'd fax them all the story.
I was riveted. In 2014, they made King of Kong the musical, which parodied the characters and events depicted in the documentary. I couldn't find any songs from it.
Oh my gosh. I had no idea.
According to whatever Wikipedia I was on, a scripted film adaptation is in the works. Seth Gordon has said the movie might be a sequel rather than a remake, telling the story of how the documentary changed both men's lives as well as their continuing rivalry. And Seth Gordon has put Steve Wiebe in many movies as little cameos. So clearly Steve Wiebe became friends with Seth Gordon, or is a good guy, and
and worthy of a relationship. That's really sweet. And I love Seth Gordon's career after this, because I think he was recognized for his story sense and his ability to create characters and balance the line between dark comedy and quirkiness. And it's,
Where do you stand on Horrible Bosses?
I loved Horrible Bosses.
Oh, me too. I've seen it a dozen times. I love it.
Me too.
So in terms of documentary filmmaking, how was this received amongst your peers? Because 2007 was when you were very much in that world.
Yeah, it was like kind of the golden era of documentary filmmaking. And there was this big divide between the real premium cinematic, beautiful docs and the ones that felt gritty and real and fly on the wall. And I was in the world of the gritty fly on the wall, where it didn't feel produced. It felt authentic. And so this film was a darling for that, because it wasn't trying to be beautiful or epic, but it was a story, and it was tight, and it moved, and it was funny, and it had good music. And so it was award winning, and
it was
Rotten Tomato. Yeah. I mean, at festivals, not Academy or anything. So it was a very successful documentary. and of that era and genre, it was it rose to the top. So it was very popular.
Wow. Oh, I keep getting King Kong. Stop
I know.
autocorrecting.
Stupid.
I was like, no, it won for visual effects. No, it did not.
No.
I never would have known about this. And this is so nerderific. It's just so in the wheelhouse. And it shows the passion people feel. I would have gotten this nerdy about if there was a musical theater competition and
Yeah.
I thought it was rigged and she won instead of me. I won't go into my painful story about community auditions when the tap team beat me because there were more of them. But it's, you know, I would have taken it completely seriously.
Yeah. It's
As
that
these people did.
community story, that small town community story that is so big to people, and it should be. I mean, it's their lives. It gives them joy and distraction and connection and accomplishments.
hmm I hope everyone listening sees this movie. I feel bad that I went on and maybe did too many spoilers, but I promise if you all watch this movie, your jaws will hit the floor. You won't feel like, oh, I know every twist and turn. It's a gold mine.
It is a gold mine. And if you watch it through that lens of, oh my gosh, I can't believe these people exist. It was sad to watch in many ways, but it also just makes me so happy to be a human because these people are fascinating and they care about something. And that's, to me, what's so appealing about nerddom is just watching people care about something.
Yeah, that's really what it is about. Thank you so much for introducing me to this movie.
I'm glad you liked it. As I was watching it again, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure about my students. I wasn't sure about you. I thought, oh boy, has this not held up? And I have to say, it didn't feel as magical as it did when I first watched it in 2007 because
Well, of course.
it was breaking boundaries that have been broken many times since then. But
Right.
it's still a gold mine in many ways.
It is akin to Hands on a Hard Body. It exposes you to a world and these rich characters that you didn't know, you just can't imagine. And I love that movie, and I love this one. And so,
Yay.
well done, Meg.
Yes.
Okay, I know you don't have anything to plug. You are not looking
No,
for anyone to follow you anywhere.
Nobody can plug into me. Stay
Gross.
away.
So I will tell everybody that Make Me a Nerd is a production of True Story FM, engineering by the peerless Pete Wright. My theme song is Wonderstruck by Jane and the Boy. You can reach out to me and I will pass along any messages of love and admiration to Megan at Mandy_Kaplan_Clavens, both with K's, on Instagram. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, please take 5 seconds, write a review, and share your thoughts there. I love to hear from everybody. And if you're feeling extra supportive and invested, go to makemeanerd.com and hit the join button for more access to me and more content and to get your episodes ad-free and early. Thank you so much, Meg.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
I want to reach through my screen and hug you, but that's not going to go very well.
No, don't break the glass.
And I would love to tell everybody what I'm doing next, but here's what's going on behind the scenes of Make Me a Nerd. Due to sickness and rescheduling, I'm not sure which episodes are releasing when. So that Buffy episode is still out there, TBD. So I know I've got Andor coming up, and the Babadook I think might be next. There's tons of great stuff. Craven the Hunter I'm about to do, but I don't know which one's happening when. So everybody take in all of those things and join me next week.
We will.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.